Hello, Pastor Chris Laughlin, Messiah Lutheran Church. This week's devotion will not include a psalm. Instead, it will include a reading from the Old Testament and a reading from the New Testament. From Genesis 32. That same night, he, Jacob, got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok, that's a river. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go, unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. And again from Mark 9. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and some scribes arguing with them. When the whole crowd saw him, they were immediately overcome with awe, and they ran forward to greet him. He asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" Someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him to the ground, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so." Jesus answered them, "You faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. When the spirit saw Jesus, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And the father said, "From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into water to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you are able, all things can be done for the one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out, "I believe, help my unbelief." When Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him, and never enter him again." After crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took the boy by the hand and lifted him up, and he was able to stand. So, in both our reading from Genesis and our reading from Mark, we see people struggling. The first, Jacob, is actually struggling or striving, wrestling with God. Doesn't know he's God initially. God strikes him on the hip. He does not walk away from the encounter uninjured. But at the same time, the man, who turns out to be God, blesses Jacob and renames him. Renames him Israel. And the word Israel literally means one who strives with God, or struggles with God. In our gospel reading, we hear Jesus say, "I can heal your son if you just believe." And the man says, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." And he too is struggling with himself, struggling with his son, struggling with Jesus. These are both examples of faithful people trying to be faithful and struggling in the attempt. And in both cases, they are blessed. Jacob, blessed by God, renamed by God, one who strives with God. And the father of the boy is blessed in his son being healed and being returned to him. I think we are all struggling with God in one way or another. And I also believe that God never lets us go, never stops wrestling with us, gives us new names in our baptism, and blesses us in one way or another. Now, the struggle is not easy. After all, it's God we're struggling with. And God, however, is big enough to handle our questions, big enough to struggle with us, and loves us enough never to give up on us or let us go. Amen.